Elizabeth Chappell, a lifelong entrepreneur who finally found my niche. After years of new ideas and jumping from business to business, I figured out how to turn a craft into a successful career. In 2016, I started a monthly subscription box for quilters. That little startup has grown into a thriving, multiple six-figure business that I am so proud of. As a published author, designer of fabrics and patterns being sold throughout the world, my favorite thing to do is to teach others how to grow a career of their dreams. Each week, you'll hear from me or from other guests who are creative entrepreneurs, so you can learn exactly what to do and what not to do to grow a career that's more rewarding and successful than you ever thought possible. If you're ready to turn your craft into a career that you love, I am so excited you're here. Welcome to the Craft to Career podcast. Today's podcast episode is a really fun one for me. It stemmed from a listener reaching out and saying, hey, I would really love to hear from a shop owner. Specifically, this listener said, I am currently looking into buying a retail quilt and notion business in a town of, 44,000 people. She asked me, would you ever consider featuring an interview with a retail quilt store owner who might also do online sales and just share some insights? And she had some specific questions. And so I said to this listener, hey, yeah, let me know who you are interested in hearing from. And she actually went on Facebook and did some looking around. And she said, man, this Muppins Sewing Emporium keeps coming up over and over again. And so I said, done. Let me reach out and let me ask the shop owner. So Cheryl Sleboda, she is the shop owner of Muppins Sewing Emporium. And she was so quick to reply, so sweet, and said, absolutely, I would absolutely love to come. And I shared the questions that this listener wanted me to ask. And she said, yep, I'm an open book. I'll share. And so I'm really excited for you to listen to this, especially if you are interested at all in opening a retail quilt shop. You probably have questions, as I would too, as you should. And Cheryl is such a great example of some really tangible, practical things that you can do to make your shop successful. So let's dive in and let me introduce you to Cheryl Sleboda. Cheryl, thank you so much for being here on the Craft to Career podcast. For our listeners, could you give us a brief introduction and tell us who you are in the quilting community?
Sure. My name is Cheryl Sleboda, and I am a fabric manipulation expert. I have been in the quilting industry since about 2010, and I currently, in addition to being a teacher, pattern writer, etc., I have a semi-new quilt shop in Paducah, Kentucky. The
So cool.
Quilt City, USA.
Which I've never been. That's on my bucket list. And then if I go, I can visit your shop because I'm assuming it's open year-round, even if the Paducah Quilt Show is not going on.
That's right. Yes. We are open year-round. And Paducah is Quilt City year-round, even when Quilt Week is not happening. And it's a pretty cool place for quilters. So you should definitely make it a trip out.
Yeah, I will. I'm going to make this happen. So I'm super curious to know what a fabric manipulation expert, did I say that right?
Yes.
What does that mean? Tell me more. I'm intrigued.
Well, I guess the short version of this superhero story is I went to school for theater and fashion, and I wanted to be a costume designer, costume maker, and really quickly got into that field and realized my parents were right. There was no money in that field, and I went into the corporate side and I started working in the comic book industry. And for 20 years, I worked for essentially a distributor of comic books. And my job was to teach comic book stores how to be better comic book stores. But my sewing ended up being a side deal. Like it was just something I did for myself. It wasn't any it wasn't a like a full-time thing. It was just like, oh, this is what I'll do because I love to sew and that's what I wanted to do with my career. So I still just wanted to sew. And I picked up quilting in 1997. And
Awesome.
that feels like a million years ago now. But yeah. And so around 2006, I started a blog just for myself. And I did a project starting in 2007, and it was a quilt a week, a mini quilt a week, and it was like an art quilt project. And I did a mini quilt a week, and these quilts were 6 inches by 6 inches. They were really tiny. And I did one a week for 4.5 years straight. And I put them all on my blog, and that really, at that time, that was the social media of the day. You ran a blog, and my blog was very popular, and it helped launch my career.
Yeah, it did. So, well, okay, that's when the blogs really were booming. That was like
Yes.
when it first started. So you hit that timing just right. And then the starving artist story. So tell me, how did you turn quilting? Like you said, that's when my career started. Did you leave the comic book world? Do you feel like, okay, a person can actually earn an income as a quilter? Talk to me about that.
So, at the time, I was running it as a total side hustle. So in 2010, people started asking me to come and teach things. And one of my quilts that I did in 2010 took off and was picked up by BuzzFeed at the time, which was
Mm.
like going viral. Before you went viral now means something totally different. But back then, if you were featured on BuzzFeed, it was a big deal. And one of my blogs on using conductive thread and LEDs to put lights in your quilts got
Hmm.
picked up by BuzzFeed. And overnight, everyone's asking me, how do I do that? How do you teach this? Do you sell this? And I was in that entrepreneurial spirit. I was like, of course I do. and
Yeah.
and and so I started selling LED light kits and teaching and going across the country to various quilt guilds. But deep down, I did not want to be known as the girl who puts lights in quilts. I wanted to do fabric manipulation. And that came out of my costuming background. And it came from, all of these historical folding and pleating and gathering and tucking. And I love all of that dimension. And we're very tactile beings, those of us in the quilt world. So I wanted to lean more heavily into that aspect. And I thought, oh no, I'm going to be trapped forever as the girl who puts lights in quilts. And it is not where I wanted to be. So what I started to do was I slowly put these beautiful fabric manipulated quilts together, and I would hide LEDs in them and then just eventually just stop putting the lights into them. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's how I kind of circumvented being the light up girl.
And
So
it worked, right? You were able to maneuver.
yeah, and it was an interesting, transition because initially, I had been on Quilting Arts TV, and I had had a magazine article at the time, and I just was really nervous about being pigeonholed into that one technique for the rest of my quote unquote career. So I wanted to show that I was more than that. I was broader as in technique and scope. And so, I was running all of this at the same time I had a full-time and a very busy full-time job. I went to hundreds of Comic Cons. I did dozens of them a year, and it was all travel. So I, had to learn how to run a business while running a full-time job. And in 2017, I left the comic book industry and went full time, and it was the scariest
Mhm.
um, thing I've ever done. But that year, that first year in business, full time, I came within $5,000 of my corporate salary. So
That's
I
amazing.
thought, oh my gosh, it was such a relief, but also it was such a comfort because I thought, "Oh my gosh, I can do this."
How did you do it? Like, where did that money come from that first year? And continuing, I'm curious where the income comes
Oh,
from.
yeah. So first of all, like at that point, I had started diversifying my income streams. I did have the online part, which was the selling of the kits and the selling of the patterns that I started to develop that had the fabric manipulation techniques in them. I had a tool that I developed because, again, I was asked to come onto Quilting Arts TV. They asked if I could bring the heirloom smocking that I was doing. And I was putting these smocked blocks into my quilts, and they thought that was really cool. Well, when I went to go film, I realized that the most time consuming part of the preparation to smock was to mark the backside of your fabric. And I looked and looked for a tool that did that, and I couldn't find one. And so I found a guy with an acrylic, ruler, and I said, "Hey, I have an idea. Could you adjust one for me? Could you make these tweaks?" And he made me this acrylic ruler. Well, I bring it onto the show, and of course they say, "Well, no, you know you have to sell these, right?"
Mhm.
And I was like, "Oh, of
Surprise.
course." Yeah, and so, all along I had been sort of building up these, techniques along with the tools that helped me make my process easier. And I felt like, okay, well, those are the things that other people will want. And then I don't believe in the unitasker in my studio. I like my sewing tools to do more than one thing. So I started looking at those tools and saying, well, what are, I don't know, three other things that this tool can do? And that really helped me solidify my ideas because I wanted it to be more than just a singular thing that you buy once and then you put it away or you give it away at the next quilt guild meeting. So
Mhm, mhm.
that was my goal, was to develop these tools. So all along while I'm working full time, I'm sort of like moonlighting at the job, which they were totally aware of and so supportive of, which I know is very unique in the overall industry. A lot of people do their side hustle in secret, and mine was like a open secret at my job. Everybody knew, and they were so supportive in that. And I don't know that I would have kept going if it had to be, super secret. But it was the best, arrangement I could possibly have. It was fantastic. But, yeah, so that first year, I had been building up with all of these different revenue streams. I had done, the tool manufacturing and the online business and the orders that would come through and my patterns. And then I started doing some B2B consulting. I did I taught all over the place. I taught for practically every major sewing convention that there was. And so I was teaching, I was traveling, I was doing all of this stuff. So when I dropped the full-time job, it was sort of just, okay, well then just lean heavier into what you were doing. And if it was, I was running out of time
Mm-hmm.
because the full-time job was keeping me back from
Yeah.
growing. And so that's where it was just the last anchor and I let it go.
So it was an obvious, like, you've got money coming in, there's more of a demand than you have time. You're safe leaving this job because you've got this thing here.
Right. Right.
Have you ever had burnout? I'm hearing all the it sounds exhausting, like the traveling, the teaching. It sounds it's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. But there is that whole in any self-employed position, there's a lot of hills and valleys. And what I realized was that, that first year, it was a lot of hills and a lot of valleys, and the valleys were deep. They were like, there was nothing coming in. And, there were these peaks that you had, and those peaks had to carry you through those droughts. And what I realized was the overall, I needed to be able to smooth that out. And one of those was, managing the teaching, managing the, trips on the road. I was starting to also like take, vendor booth space at various vendor shows, and I would travel and I would set up and I would tear down all by myself. And, and I just, but when you love it, you love it. When and yes, there are times when, a drought hits and I don't feel as enthusiastic as I guess I was in the beginning. But then I have the control over that. I have the ability to say, okay, well, what's exciting me right now? What's not exciting me right now? And, start to lean into, some of the other ideas that I have for my business, which, I'm a planner girl. I don't know if you're a planner girl,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
but I'm a planner girl. And I have my planner. I have carried these slips of paper in my planner for, I don't know, I think it's been 10 years now. I've been using the same planner. And the slips are, they're just sheets of paper with as many business ideas as I can possibly write down. And
Ooh, that's a lot.
it is, I mean, this planner, this piece of paper, which goes from planner to planner, is every product, every tool, every pattern, every concept, every class, everything that I have. Like, if I come up with something, it goes on that paper. And I have more work than I could possibly ever, like, want to have. Like, that to me was like, I will just look at that piece of paper and go, okay, time to dive into this project or that project. Um, right now, I'm writing my third book. I'm writing another pattern. I'm doing another class. I have more ideas than I have actual physical time.
Yes. Yes. I think every entrepreneur feels that. I am curious, do you have a team at this point?
My team is my husband and I, and my husband Charlie is he came to work with the business in 2020. He was working in hospital system at the time, and I said, with COVID, why don't you just come work for me? We have plenty of work that needs to be done. So he has taken over my all of my inventory. He has taken over my shipping, my basically keeping everything orderly because I'm a messy and he's clean, and so that worked out really well. And he picks all of the fabric for the quilt shop. So
That we want to talk about. We're going to put a pin in that and come back to that. I'm super intrigued.
sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, at this point, I can't do it without him. So he's not allowed to go back to full-time work.
Yes, not an option. Is he the only one? It's just the two of you, or do you have other people that help with, I don't know, anything else?
That's it. We bring on some part-time folks during quilt week when our shop is completely overwhelmed. And that's it. That we run the shop ourselves, we ship everything ourselves. It's a two-person business at this point.
I am impressed. And okay, I just heard, how am I just picking this up? Are you from the Midwest? I'm a Minnesota girl, and I think I picked out.
Yes, I'm from Chicago.
Yes, okay. I could sniff it out. I
Yeah,
just, now
yeah.
it's like coming out more in me.
Yeah, I do that as well. I'm like, yeah, when I get my Chicago on, and it is very unusual to be down here in Paducah as a, you know, an interloper or whatever. I'm a northerner here in Paducah, and it's been a lot of fun. They've been very lovely here. Actually, Paducah's. This whole situation just kind of came out of the blue as well. So,
Yeah, how did you end up in Paducah? I mean, I know it's like the quilting capital, but if you don't have roots there, that's a big jump, you know?
so it was post pandemic. It was 2022. We had come to Paducah. I had come to Paducah with a friend of mine, and she and I were here to see if Paducah was back for us to possibly vend at. So we drove down from Chicago and Wisconsin. She's from Wisconsin. I'm in the Chicago area. So we drove together. We came down here. We said, oh my gosh, this show is so back. Paducah is this crazy wonderland of Disneyland of quilting during Quilt Week. And I said this would be perfect for us to come back and start vending at. And my friend Amy and I were driving down the street, and I screamed out, "Stop the car, there's a building for sale." And so she pulls the car over. We get out, we look in the window, and it's Eleanor Burns's old Quilt in a Day building. And
Really?
and I'm looking through the window, and I'm like, I don't know, it looks like it needs so much work. And she says, the building next door is for sale too. So we look in that window, and I was like, there is something about this building that is calling to me. And during the pandemic, my husband and I thought maybe we would go into a mixed use commercial residential situation in the Chicagoland area. And we had looked at dozens and dozens of buildings, and we had one picked out. And while we were in negotiations, the owner of the building took a cash offer. So I
Mm.
lost out on that opportunity in the Chicago area. So here I am in Paducah, and I call the number on the building and I say, when can I get a tour? And he said, I can come anytime. And I said, I'm going. So my friend Amy and I drove back to Chicago, picked up my husband and drove back the next day. This is a 6-hour drive, mind you.
Wow,
And
this is amazing.
we toured that building, and we got to the third floor. It's a 3-story building. So it's a shop front on the bottom, and then there's 2 floors above that. And I get to the third floor, and it is like, it hasn't been touched since the 1930s. It's completely wide open, but it's like, it felt really small. And I said that to the the realtor, he said, "Oh, well, hang on one second." And he goes into a closet, and we're like, "Where is this guy going?" And then a painting on the wall swings open, and he's behind it. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is a speakeasy."
No way. That is so cool.
Oh my gosh. And so I looked at my husband, and he just looks at the floor. He's like, "Oh no."
Tell me you kept that there. That is so cool.
We are keeping it there. So we went home. As we drove home, we made an offer on the building. The offer was accepted. And 2 months later, I moved my family from a 5-bedroom home in Chicago to
A
to
speakeasy.
a speakeasy building in downtown Paducah. And we're in a historic district. Our building's 126 years old. It is incredible. I'm over the moon with it. And I'm a history buff, and I love the history of things. I love the history of sewing. I love the history of sewing tools. And I love like just being part of this historic district and being the caretaker of this, you know, piece of Paducah history. It's just a neat, neat thing. And so, yeah, within, I want to say 6 months, we had the storefront open, and we are the tiniest little quilt shop you ever did see. And we're 600 square feet. We are tiny. And someone named us the Little Goth Quilt Shop, and I love that.
I like that.
Yeah.
So do you offer, it doesn't sound like you could, but do you offer in-person classes at your place?
So the cool thing about Paducah is that we are about a block and a half away from the National Quilt Museum. And my since I don't have the space for a quilt classroom in my building, what I decided to do was to take my classes over there. And they have a lovely classroom space. And not only have I taught for them as just an educator for the National Quilt Museum, but their classroom is for rent. And so if I want to hold a class, I will just do it. And that will also support the National Quilt Museum.
So, okay, I'm now personally asking, but I know my listeners are also going to benefit from this. Do you have a list of classes? I would love to come and learn how to do some smocking and all of these things. Where can we find out about that?
So all of my classes are listed at muppin.com, Muppin. That is my nickname. It's been I think it was my AOL handle.
Love
And
it.
people, I know that really dates me. Um, you've got mail, but the Muppin name just kind of stuck. And when I needed a .com, I picked muppin.com, and it's been muppin.com ever since. And so our shop is called Muppins Sewing Emporium, and everything's linked off of muppin.com. Our classes, our lectures that are available, the shop link is there, all the things. My blog, which is not as active as it used to be, but it's still there. And yeah, so everything's there at muppin.com.
Okay, I'll put a link to that in the show notes. So now we put a pin in this. I would love to come back to, first of all, the confidence that you have in your husband for picking all the fabric, but he does. So what goes into, is it just what he likes? Is it what's trending? I mean, let's chat about that.
He is the one who keeps me in check. And, if it were me, I would just go, "Oh, that's pretty. Let's buy it." But what he did was he implemented a system. And, there is the typical open to buy. So I don't know if your listeners are familiar with the open to buy system, but essentially it's a cash flow management concept. And when you have you put aside certain amounts of money to make purchases for the store, and that open to buy, that dictates how much fabric we can buy. And so, and because we're 600 square feet, we do not have a lot of fabric in our store. And our store is very tailored to a very, very, very particular market. We, being as small as we are super niche. And that kind of store only works in certain places, which is why we picked Paducah. So when it comes to fabric, we have to think about what will the people who we know who are walking through our door, how do we buy for them? It's not about what we buy for us. And I think a lot of shops think about what they want. And this is very similar to like my comic book store guys. Like they would buy Superman because they personally love Superman. And it becomes a very Superman heavy looking store. And you see that in quilting. You see the flavor of the owner come through in the fabric choices. And I will say that we do skew very heavily on Halloween, being the little goth quilt shop. But we are also very just clear about who our customer is and what they have bought from us and what we think they will continue to buy from us. So our open to buy dictates how much we buy, and he keeps me in check on that. But then we have a system of buying fabric. Now he is the first pass. It has to pass him as a yes or no. And let me tell you, he is so good at looking at collections and saying, nope, that was so and so 2 years ago. No, this looks like something we just saw in a different catalog. I mean, he is lasered in on that kind of thing. And I mean, we pretty much try not to buy on trends that are color story, because with a very, very small shop, one collection can like swamp our store and make it look very one note. And so we're very careful about, if we're going to bring anything in on the bolt and how much of that we're going to bring in. So he's very tied to that. Now, then it comes down to me, and I'm being the front of house. I have to have this confidence in how much I think I can sell that fabric. And we have a 70% or higher. I have to give it a rating, essentially. And if I'm 70% confident or higher, we buy it. And that's our buying method. It's first is, can we afford it? Second is how much of it, and third is the confidence in selling it. And those three things flavor everything that comes in through the door.
Fascinating. So I'm curious, if you had to describe your ideal customer, go ahead and like give them a name, describe your ideal customer, age, all the things, and how have you narrowed that?
Well, I will tell you that I thought I knew who my customer was. And when we first opened these doors, we had a mix of product that was all wrong. So wrong. We had thought that, I thought essentially that my ideal customer was going to be similar to the customers I saw at quilt shows, and would be, like they would as when we were vendors. And that was not the case. What we found is that we are a 90+% tourist destination customer. And that completely changed how I have to consider what I buy for the store. My first round of inventory, we had all these elaborate scissors and cutting rulers and mats and I realized really quickly if it did not fit into a carry-on suitcase, it was not moving in my store. And all of a sudden it was just like, oh, I my price point had to come way down. Um my 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 challenge was like, how do I provide for a tourist versus being a neighborhood quilt shop? And I was set up to be your, little neighborhood quilt shop. And instead, I am 100% now a tourist destination. So the things that had to change were one, the size of everything, two, whether or not it could go through TSA, and three, um, it has to be wrapped in an experience. And so I have then now moved into more experiential retail than just, being your neighborhood quilt shop. And that was a huge change.
I do want to hear, what do you mean wrapped in an experience? I love this and I want to hear more about it.
Okay, well, so first of all, I am the new person in Paducah, right? So I already had a little bit of a challenge in that I am the only quilt shop in downtown Paducah and the closest quilt shop to the National Quilt Museum. So I realized that one of the things about Paducah is that we get quilt tourists all year round. People who are making their journey, who their bucket list, they want to come to Paducah, and I want to be an experience for them. And when they come in, it's not just about like, hi, how are you doing? Where are you from? It's, hi, how are you? Welcome to Paducah. Where have you been in town? Where can I direct you to go? How can I make your experience here as delightful as possible? And a lot of this comes from my absolute favorite book, Be Our Guest by the Disney Institute. And it is a fantastic book about being the ultimate in just customer experience. And I want you to learn about Paducah. And so we have found out that our 126-year-old building used to have a laundry on its first floor, which is where the shop is. And so we have made it look like almost like a little mini vintage general store. And all of our fixtures are repurposed. They're all vintage. They're all antiques. And we have this whole vibe of both being goth and vintage at the same time. And so I will tell you about the history of our building. We collect vintage irons because the building used to have this laundry, and they were known for their pressing abilities. And so we have this vintage advertisement from the Paducah newspaper that says pressing for particular people. And so we have all these vintage irons around, and I'll tell you all of the history of the iron.
That is
So
so
we're kind
cool.
of, yeah, it's like almost like a history lesson plus a Paducah lesson plus, just like welcoming you to our town and making sure that you have a wonderful experience while you're here. And um I usually will see people either before or after they've gone to the museum. So I always want to hear about their experience and um, or encourage them to go if they were maybe not thinking they were going to visit the museum this time. So I just, I'm about having a good time and making your time in Paducah memorable. And I almost don't. So it's in a way what I'm doing too is I'm using my visitors as a way to collect information so that I can then put you on our mailing list and then sell to you via our mail order business. So everything you see in our store is available online.
Okay. So when you say mail order, you just mean they go to your website, but you ship it to them.
Yes. Yes. And we offer shipping for anything that you buy. So if you are seeing something and you're just like, oh my gosh, I need all of this. And you're like, but I don't have room in my suitcase. Of course, we'll ship it to you.
Mm-hmm,
So,
mm-hmm.
yeah, it's part of the service. And that's where we get to be small, we get to be nimble, we get to be agile, and I love that. I love the every day is a different day. And we initially started, and we had many days where we wouldn't make $1, and then we would have these big weeks, big weekends, big summers. But now we're in a really good place, and we're basically making year round, and I'm excited about it.
Yeah. And I'm looking now on my phone. I looked up images of your store. There's like a gumball machine and you sell vintage buttons for 25 cents. Do you still have that or is this like an old photo?
Oh yeah. So that's actually that's one of our big history things is the gumball machine. So my family has always had a foot in the coin operated business. The coin operated so my mother ran a coin operated business, and so I that's my little nod to my family's coin op business. And so we sell vintage buttons. They're mother of pearl buttons. And Paducah was a big center for mother of pearl in the mother of pearl trade. Paducah was the shells were fished out of the Ohio River here in Paducah. And there's a shell pile where you can get the shells that have the buttons that have been drilled out of them. And so we talk about the button history of Paducah. And if you want to take home a mother of pearl button souvenir, that's our our gumball machine.
Oh, and you really are like tying in history and connections everywhere. Like that is a talent I would say that you have for sure.
It's just it one of the things that I realized in business is that if you truly love it, if like is to just go in and go deep. And if you find something like, I have with fabric manipulation, there's so many techniques, and so many techniques that I haven't even touched yet. And what I realized, I think beyond the, um, going beyond just the lights and the quilts, that really had a very limited amount of things that it was ever going to be able to do. And when I
Mhm.
moved into the fabric manipulation, which is my passion, right? That was the thing I loved to do the most. I realized it was also the thing that had the most like marketable
Mhm.
things that go along with it, right? It was deeper than just the lights and quilts. And so that's why, this move and this shop, it just gives me a little showcase. It's, a whole wall section of our store is just our product. So we are our own, what do you call it? Our own warehouse. You know what I mean? We get to be like
Mhm.
our own showcase for our own product. And in many ways, that allows me to help other shops think about things like, how should my product look in a shop? And, I give new products a shot with 2 feet by 5 feet. And I look for products that can fill 2 feet by 5 feet. And,
Interesting.
and I think it comes from like a planogram, way, where retail, we don't think about these big box ideas, right? But how does your product look in a retail store environment, and how does it look on grid wall? How does it look on slat wall? If you were given 2 feet by 5 feet, what does that look like? And so now I'm doing more of that. I did some of that with Quilt Inc. and Threads of Success, and now I'm doing that with Road to California and their new Crossroads show. So
Hmm.
there's a lot going on.
So I'm curious for a product manufacturer, someone who wants to sell their own notions. Do you have any tips of like to really stand out or things that sell well visually have these elements or I don't know, anything that you can think of like that?
I can tell you is absolutely care about how your product is packaged and how well your product needs explanation. So if you have to explain it, then you need more marketing materials either on your packaging or with your packaging so that you would have people say, you don't have to have someone stand there and explain it to them. And so that's my first one. The second one would be to care about how big your packaging is, like on a peg or on a slat wall peg. Like how if your size is too big that you can't hang something either directly under it or directly next to it, that causes issues for retailers because we need to be able to pack that wall tighter. We don't want to cover your product, so don't make your packaging so that it's like off-sized, if that makes any sense. Um, and so, Big Box does this really well. We don't. We just make packaging because we think it's pretty. um,
Mhm, mhm.
and we need packaging that explains what it is. And if not, then you need what I call a silent salesman to go with it. Either, you know, uh, a little poster, a little sign, or something that the retailer can hang. And don't expect that your retailer is going to know how to do that. You need that signage to do that for you. That silent salesman is really important because your staff at a quilt shop might not know. The owner may know, but the staff might not know. And so you're losing
Mhm.
sales if you're not including that how to along with the product.
Fascinating. Yeah. Okay. I'm so curious because I do not run a brick and mortar. What would you say people do not expect about running a shop?
Um, people
I
will
like the
come
laugh.
in. Yeah, people will come in with like 1 minute to go. And they may only want to use your restroom.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, there, you know, it- I have not had a bad day in my store yet. And we've been open now for 4 years. And I think one of the things I thought was going to be a problem was, just the looky-loos or whatever. But I turn looky-loos into buyers, and it's kind of a game that I play.
I was going to say you're good at this because I've been in some stores and that doesn't happen. So tell us your secrets. What are some tips you've got here?
Oh my gosh, like I could do a whole thing just on this, right? uh, But I think it's what every person has, something going on, right? They walk through the door and they're carrying their heavy load of their day. And this is supposed to be their thing for them, their respite, their treat. And if we're not treating our customers as if they're the most important thing of our day, then we're not doing it right. And I can tell you the number of times that I have been in a quilt shop and I've been completely looked over, followed around like I was going to steal something. And I said, you know what? I'm going to change this. I am not going to treat any of my customers like I've been treated. And My goal is to have you walk out thinking you've had a great experience. And that to me was the most important part of the sales trick. There's no trick to it. It's just, how are you doing? Yeah, are you having fun in Paducah today? Let me give you some advice on where to go for lunch. Are you here with on vacation? And you just kind of talk to them. And look, I have had plenty of people who are just like, "Hello," and then they give you that subtle sign that they don't want to be
Leave me
talked
alone.
to. I
Yeah.
I I listen to it, and I'm
Mhm.
just, "Hey, I'm here if you need me, and let me know if you have any questions. I am happy to help you." I mean, we're a tiny store. You really can't get away from
True.
me.
Yeah.
So, I just, I sit there and I do a little bit of, paperwork or cleaning up under my register and, and we just try to make sure that everyone has a great time.
So that book, Be Our Guest, I'm assuming that has been a holy grail of sorts of ideas for you?
Yes, and it is, that and my other favorite book is Story Brand.
Oh, by Miller, what's his name?
Yes, yes, yes. That
Yeah.
that book is so good. Because then you're building everything around your, like, central brand, and trust me, I am the brand with the skull with a needle, like a skull with a needle and thread, like, we are the little goth quilt shop, and that whole skull needle has been my logo since 2010. It I took my last $300 in my bank account and started that as a t-shirt because I made one for myself, and then, of course, people were like, "Where can I get that?" I keep falling into these businesses.
Mhm, mhm.
And next thing you know, I'm in the t-shirt business, and it just kinda it keeps growing. It's just a very, I listen to what people say, and it's like people say, "Oh, I want that." I'll give it to them.
Well, and you're pleasant, you're kind, you've got a good laugh. I mean, the moment I even reached out to you, "Oh, yes," and you made it sound like it was such an honor for you to be on my podcast where it's really my honor. I'm like,
Oh
"Oh,
my gosh,
she
no,
makes me
you have
feel
no
real
idea.
good," you know? So you got away with people, in the best way. And yeah, it just sounds like you're genuinely kind, which you've done a good job. So I actually had a podcast listener reach out to me and she said, "Hey, I'm opening a brick and mortar. I'd love to hear from some shops." And I kind of put it back on her, to be fair. I'm like, "Tell me who you want to hear from and I'm happy to reach out." And she did a little investigation on Facebook and asked around what are some of the best shops. And yours was hands down the one everyone was like, Muppins Sewing Emporium over and over and over. So I was like, all right, let me reach out. So you've done something right, you know?
Yeah, and I think too, it's a lot of, I'm a Gen Xer. I'm 53 and I've been doing this now for what, like 15, 16 years this year. And when you've been in business 15 years, you kind of have honed it down a bit, and I knew that I didn't want to have your corner neighborhood quilt shop. I was always going to be something different. And even when I was planning on doing my shop in the Chicagoland area, I was picking a place where a quilt shop already existed. We had looked at a little town in Illinois called Morris, Illinois, and there's two sewing shops on that same street, and we were going to be the third. And it was going to be, I was kind of hoping for a little like, Missouri Star, Hamilton kind of destination, right? Where you go to one street and there's three quilt shops. But that was the building that wasn't meant to be. And here in Paducah, this is the building that's meant to be. And We moved everybody here. And our
Mhm.
business supports our whole family. We don't have
Mhm.
extra income. There's no uh, there's no like side support. There's no alimony. There's no, there's
Mhm.
none
Mhm.
of that is happening. It is just our hard work. And I have a ring that I wear on my finger, and it says, "The future depends on what you do today." And there is never a truer statement when it comes to your business. I look at this ring every single day, and what I realized was you have to do something every day that helps future proof you, your business, and your life. And that's what we're always trying to do. It's like the orders that we place. Obviously, the fabric comes 6 months later. You're building around that, but you got to build that today. And so every step I take, I think, okay, how is this going to affect us in 3, 6, 9 months, a year? We're trying to always, like, it's like playing chess a little bit ahead, with the moves, and that's not intuitive for a lot of people. I think when you are planning to open a shop, I want to teach people, you you don't have to start with 3,000, 5,000 square feet. You can start small and grow into bigger spaces. We're all trying to just compare ourselves to a shop that's been in business for 5, 10 years. They're 5,000 square feet, 10,000 square feet, with a fleet of machines and a back room with a classroom. And, that maybe that's not in your budget right now. I mean, I opened my store with no fabric and my own product, and that was it. And then we went to get product. And as it trickled in, we sold it and got bigger. I mean, we did
Mhm.
not I don't think we opened with more than $15,000. And that was huge. I felt like that was scraping every single dime that we had and scraped it all together, and was just like, okay, and this is all we can afford right now. And now, I mean, last year our business was up 35%. Um yeah, I mean, don't be afraid to start small. I think, stores can be under 1,000 square feet. That a type of retail environment is going to be less expensive for you to rent, or buy, and you can start there and go in stages. I feel like when it comes to store ownership, just think on what you can do today and how you can grow that business, and plan your growth as best you can. And I don't ever really want to be bigger than our 600 square feet, and I'm okay with where I'm at. I'm okay with the money it makes. Um, we have more product coming in now than we ever have, and we're at a storage point. We're at or at a maximum, capacity. We're like, "Oh no, we're getting 12 bolts." That's a lot for us.
Which is crazy that you're able to support your family with buying less than, 12 bolts. That's or, around that
Oh,
much.
yeah. 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 I think, what it comes down to is, yeah, I still travel and I teach. I still so, it's diversifying. Absolutely. I have a Patreon, a B2B Patreon. I have, so it's revenue streams.
Mhm. Mhm.
Make them all go at the same time.
Diversify that income. Yep.
100%. It has to, because that's what keeps the valleys you know, um, from being Death Valley, right? It keeps you from being, cash strapped at your lowest points in your calendar. And that's what we've tried very hard to smooth out as best we can. We still have them and we are very aware of them. And so what we do is we just put during the good times, we put that money aside, and that's going to get us through those hard times.
Smart. And I'm curious, do you have a pretty healthy mindset? I've noticed a lot of my students simply in quilt pattern writing, so not store owners, but it's the mindset that will really get in the way. So, do you have doubts? Have you just always kind of like, no, this is going to work and I'm just going to do whatever it takes? Like, how has your mindset been?
Well, I will say that I have worked very hard on my mental health. And I come from a theater background, so I think a lot of the getting up and speaking and doing all of those things that would hinder a lot of people don't hinder me as much. I will say that if you're scared of speaking in front of people or anything like that, go to an improv class. Go to like one of those like your local comedy improv group and ask them if you can like watch or participate in their rehearsals or whatever. That is huge about just getting up and being able to talk on the fly is really what keeps a lot of people from doing anything. But when it comes to like what you want to do as far as like your pattern, you know, all it is just, are you putting out the best possible thing that you can put out? I feel like you know, I look at it as my patterns, my book, my shop. I didn't want to do it unless I could do the best possible version of it. And that's why I have that list of unfinished things, because they're not ready yet. They're not the best person. They're not the best possible version of themselves yet.
Well, and
So,
even it's so fun listening to you speak about this passion and all of that. I have ideas. I know an idea. I have an idea in the back of my mind that I want to do. And I'm like, you know what, Elizabeth, let's make this happen. Let's just go in and do the thing because it's fun. And I don't want to do it till it can be amazing. But like, the passion seeps through what you're saying, which I love.
yeah, and I think too that like I I have the same doubts. Sometimes they're just as crippling as it sounds. I feel, you know, oh, I don't know if anybody's ready for the little goth quilt shop or me as my little weird personality. I just, I have to put that aside and say, I'm going to deliver my lecture as best I can. I'm going to do my class as best I can. I'm going to give 100% to myself when I'm on. And I think that, a lot of people, they go to work or they go to their shop and they're just not on. And that comes out in how people feel when they walk out of that shop. And that's never how I want anyone to feel about me or my business. And so I have it was said to me a long time ago at my corporate job that there's show Cheryl and then there's business Cheryl. And and that is so true, because business Cheryl is um, not the same as show Cheryl.
Mhm. Right. Which okay, and I have one last question, and I want to let you go because I know that you're busy. But I do want to ask this listener ask that I would ask you: how much time do you spend on the floor with customers versus behind the scenes management?
um, well, the thing about business is, entrepreneurship is 24/7, right? Or it feels like it can be. These past 4 years, I've worked very hard on my work-life balance, and I want to have the ability to turn it all off and be like myself at home. I don't want to be show Cheryl during those times, or business Cheryl. So what I did was, when the customer comes in, the customer is 100% the focus. If they are, if we get 50% of our open hours, we're open from 10 to 4. If 50% of those hours are with customers in there, then I'm 50% on the show floor. I do the behind the scenes stuff as I can between when the customers are in the store. So I will say that, our day pretty much starts around 8. We end pretty much around 6. So our shop's open 10 to 4. So we get a couple hours ahead and a couple hours after to kind of work on the behind the scenes. But I may go home and, keep writing my book or sewing samples or what have you in my, I would say, call it my downtime, but like I love to sew. So my
Mm-hmm.
samples are always a joy.
Mm-hmm.
um, so yeah, I would say that, I don't think that there's ever a time I'm really not thinking about my business. Everything is kind of framed in my mind about, oh, that would be cool, or an idea that I see, or something I see on Netflix or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing inspiration everywhere, and I put that inspiration into my business.
Because you love it. I can tell you just absolutely love the shop and what you do, and that way work doesn't feel like a chore. It feels like I don't know, fun and exciting.
It does. Now, is it challenging at points? Absolutely. Is it bogged down in minutia sometimes? Yeah, absolutely. So we're planning a quilt retreat in October, and it's a lot of moving parts. It's, you know, um, scheduling all the catering and scheduling all the, so it's a bit like, there's always something going on
Mm-hmm.
that is going to challenge you. And I like to think that, they're just all temporary hurdles. Because at the end of the day, are they excited about your business? Are they excited about what you're making? Are you excited about what you're making? And just keep doing it if you are. Um,
Yeah,
I
I
think
love
that.
that. So, for our listeners, if they're curious about the retreat in October or even just finding your shop, can you share again where to go to find you?
So we are muppin.com. So Muppin. And on the socials, we are muppin.com spelled out. So it's Muppindotcom.
Oh,
That's
really?
on. Hmm. So that's on Instagram and Facebook and all of those places. And the shop now has its own social media, and it's Muppins Sewing Emporium, all spelled out.
Hmm.
And yeah, we just, love it. That's where you can find us pretty much everywhere.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast. It was a delight to chat with you, and I'm excited for the listeners to get to meet you or hear more about you.
Awesome. I appreciate this, and it's been a pleasure and an honor.
Cheryl, thank you so much for taking the time to come and talk with us so candidly and for sharing this business that you have grown to be successful and that you're clearly passionate about. That passion just seeped into me as well. And I have these ideas of things that I want to do. And that's the sign to me of a really fun podcast is it leaves me feeling inspired and motivated. And two things that I really want to just kind of reiterate to you listeners. I'm sure you have your own standout takeaways, but I just wanted to talk about it first. Cheryl mentioned she felt trapped by her big break. She had these LED quilts, and that's what she was known for. And she's like, oh gosh, is that actually what I want to be known for? Not really. There's something bigger here. But just for you students of mine, you listeners, you've probably heard me say, and I'll continue to say, it's so helpful to build a brand by being known for one thing. That's really how you can get your big break, is by having something that you are known for. And it's also very normal to feel like that's going to limit me. I don't want to only do this one thing. But as Cheryl has shown you, it's just the entry point. It's just the gateway that's going to open up growing your business and doing many, many more things. But it's so important to be known for one thing at the beginning so that you can get on the map, get on the radar, and, have your, as she had her BuzzFeed, totally went viral. You can have your thing too that will also really put you on the map. And then I love as well when she talks about the value of her shop is by being different from the other shops. It is not by being like every other shop in her town or anywhere. It's very unique. And you can go back and listen to all the ways she makes it unique. But to be successful and stand out, you really want to have your own unique approach, look, vibe, interest, whatever it might be. So I would love to hear what things stood out to you from this podcast. So go ahead and leave a comment, write a review, share what stood out to you, what your takeaways were. And if you, like this other listener, really want to hear from a specific shop owner or a certain kind of industry insider, let me know, because I love hearing from you listeners. And that is how I bring you things that are of value. So thank you so much for being here on the podcast. We will see you next week.